Code of Laws by Hammurabi. When Anu the Sublime, king of the Anunnaki, and Bel, lord of heaven and earth, had decreed the fate of the land assigned to Marduk, the overruling son of Ea, god of righteousness, dominion over earthly man, and made him great among the Igigi, they called Babylon by his illustrious name, and made it great on the earth, and founded an everlasting kingdom in it, whose foundations are laid so solidly as those of heaven and earth. Then Anu and Bel called by name me, Hammurabi, the exalted prince who feared God, to bring about the rule of righteousness in the land, to destroy the wicked and the evildoers, so that the strong should not harm the weak, and so that I should rule over the black-headed people like Shamash, and enlighten the land, to further the well-being of mankind. Hammurabi, the prince, called of Bel am I, making riches and increase, enriching Nippur and Durilu beyond compare, sublime patron of E-Kur, who re-established Eridu and purified the worship of E-Apsu, who conquered the four quarters of the world, made great the name of Babylon, rejoiced the heart of Marduk, his lord who pays daily his devotions in Sagil, the royal Sion, whom sin made, who enriched the humble, the reverent, who brings wealth to Gish-Shear-Gal, the white king, heard of Shamash, the mighty, who again laid the foundations of Sippara, who clothed the grainstones of Malkat with green, who made E-Baba great, which is like the heavens, the warrior who guarded Larsa, and renewed E-Baba, with Shamash as his helper, the Lord who granted new life to Uruk, who brought plenteous water to its inhabitants, raised the head of Yana, the perfect beauty of Anu and Nana, shield of the land, who reunited the scattered inhabitants of Isin, who richly endowed E-Galmach, the protecting king of the city, brother of the god Zamama, who firmly founded the farms of Kish, crowned E-Mete-Usang with glory, redoubled the great holy treasures of Nana, managed the temple of Hersag-Kalama, the grave of the enemy, whose help brought about victory, who increased the power of Kuta, made all glorious in E-Shidlam, the black steer, who gored the enemy, beloved of the god Nebo, who rejoiced the inhabitants of Borsippa, the sublime, who is indefatigable for E-Ziddah, the divine king of the city, the white, the wise, who broadened the fields of Dilbat, who heaped up harvests for Urash, the mighty, the Lord whom comes sceptre and crown, with which he clothes himself, the elect of Mama, who fixed the temple bounds of Kesh, who made rich the holy feasts of Nintu, the provident, solicitous, who provided food and drink for Lagash and Girsu, who provided large sacrificial offerings for the temple of Ningirsu, who captured the enemy, the elect of the oracle who fulfilled the predictions of Halab, who rejoiced the heart of Anunit, the pure prince, whose prayer is accepted by Adad, who satisfied the heart of Adad, the warrior in Karkar, who restored the vessels for worship in the E-Ud-Galgal, the king who granted life to the city of Adab, the guide of Imach, the princely king of the city, the irresistible warrior, who granted life to the inhabitants of Mashkan-Sharibi, and who brought abundance to the temple of Shidlam, the white, potent, who penetrated the secret cave of the bandits, saved the inhabitants of Malka from misfortune, and fixed their home fast in wealth, who established pure sacrificial gifts for Ea and Damgal-Nuna, who made his kingdom everlastingly great, the princely king of the city, who subjected the districts on the Ud-Kib-Nuna canal to the sway of Dagon, his creator, who spared the inhabitants of Merah and Tutul, the sublime prince, who makes the face of Nini shine, who presents holy meals to the divinity of Nin-Azu, who cared for the inhabitants in the time of need, provided a portion for them in Babylon in peace, the shepherd of the oppressed and of the slaves, whose deeds find favour before Anu-Nit, who provided for Anu-Nit in the temple of Dumash in the suburb of Akkad, who recognizes the right, who rules by law, who gave back the city of Ashur to its protecting god, who let the name of Ishtar of Nineveh remain in E-Mish-Mish, the sublime, who humbles himself before the great gods, the successor of Surmula-Il, the mighty son of Sin-Muballit, the royal scion of eternity, the mighty monarch, the son of Babylon, whose rays shine light over the land of Sumer and Akkad, the king, obeyed by the 4 quarters of the world, beloved of Nini, am I. When Marduk sent me to rule over men, to give the protection of right to the land, I did right and righteousness in, and brought about the well-being of the oppressed. The Code of Laws. 1. If anyone ensnare another, putting a ban upon him, but he cannot prove it, then he that ensnared him shall be put to death. 2. If anyone bring an accusation against a man, and the accused go to the river and leap into the river, if he sinks in the river, his accuser shall take possession of his house. But if the river proves that the accused is not guilty, and he escapes unhurt, then he who had brought the accusation shall be put to death, while he who leapt into the river shall take possession of the house that belonged to his accuser. 3. If anyone brings an accusation of any crime before the elders, and does not prove what he has charged, he shall, if a capital offence is charged, be put to death. 4. If he satisfies the elders to impose a fine of grain or money, he shall receive that fine that the action produces. 5. If a judge tries a case, reaches a decision, and presents his judgment in writing, if later error shall appear in his decision, and it be through his own fault, then he shall pay 12 times the fine set by him in the case, and he shall be publicly removed from the judge's bench, and never again shall he sit there to render judgment. If anyone steals the property of a temple or the court, he shall be put to death, and also the one who receives the stolen thing from him shall be put to death. 7. If anyone buys from the son or the slave of another man, without witnesses or a contract, silver or gold, a male or female slave, an ox or a sheep, or an ass or anything, or if he takes it in charge, he is considered a thief, and shall be put to death. 8. If anyone steal a cattle or sheep, or an ass or a pig or a goat, if it belong to a god or to the court, the thief shall pay 30-fold therefor. If they belong to a freed man of the king, he shall pay 10-fold. If the thief has nothing with which to pay, he shall be put to death. 9. If anyone lose an article, and find it in the possession of another, if the person in whose possession the thing is found says, "A merchant sold it to me, I paid for it before witnesses," and if the owner of the thing says, "I will bring witnesses who know my property," then shall the purchaser bring the merchant who sold it to him, and the witnesses before whom he bought it, and the owner shall bring witnesses who can identify his property. The judge shall examine their testimony, both of the witnesses before whom the price was paid, and of the witnesses who identify with the lost article on oath. The merchant is then proved to be a thief, and shall be put to death. The owner of the lost article receives his property, and he who bought it receives the money he paid from the estate of the merchant. 10. If the purchaser does not bring the merchant and the witnesses before whom he bought the article, but its owner brings witnesses who identify it, then the buyer is the thief, and shall be put to death, and the owner receives the lost article. 11. If the owner does not bring witnesses to identify the lost article, he is an evildoer. He is traduced, and he shall be put to death. 12. If the witnesses be not at hand, then shall the judge set a limit, at the expiration of 6 months. If his witnesses have not appeared within the 6 months, then he is an evildoer, and shall bear the fine of the pending case. Narrator's note: there is no law 13. 14. If anyone steal the minor son of another, he shall be put to death. 15. If anyone take a male or female slave of the court, or a male or female slave of a freed man, outside the city gates, he shall be put to death. 16. If anyone receive into his house a runaway male or female slave of the court, or of a freed man, and does not bring it out at the public proclamation of the major domus, the master of the house shall be put to death. 17. If anyone finds a runaway male or female slave in the open country, and brings them to their masters, the master of the slaves shall pay him 2 shekels of silver. 18. If the slave will not give the name of the master, the finder shall bring him to the palace. A further investigation must follow, and the slave shall be returned to the master. 19. If he holds the slaves in his house, and they are caught there, he shall be put to death. 20. If the slave that he caught run away from him, then he shall swear to the owners of the slave that he is free of all blame. 21. If anyone breaks a hole in a house, breaking to steal, he shall be put to death before that hole and be buried. 22. If anyone is committing a robbery and is caught, then he shall be put to death. 23. If the robber is not caught, then shall he who was robbed claim under oath the amount of his loss. Then shall the community, and on those ground and territory in whose domain it was, compensate him for the goods stolen. 24. If a person's are stolen, then shall the community pay 1 mina of silver to their relatives. 25. If fire breaks out in a house, and someone who comes to put it out casts his eye upon the property of the owner of the house, and takes the property of the master of the house, he shall be thrown into that self-same fire. 26. If a chieftain or man, a common soldier, who has been ordered to go upon the king's highway for war, does not go, but hires a mercenary, if he withholds compensation, then shall this officer or man be put to death, and he who represented him shall take possession of his house. 27. If a chieftain or man be caught in the misfortune of the king, captured in battle, and if his fields and garden be given to another, and he takes possession, if he returns, and reaches his place, his field and garden shall be returned to him. He shall take it over again. 28. If a chieftain or man be caught in the misfortune of the king, if his son is able to enter into possession, then the field and garden shall be given to him. He shall take over the fee of his father. 29. If his son is still young and cannot take possession, 1/3 of the field and garden shall be given to his mother, and she shall bring him up. 30. If a chieftain or man leaves his house, garden, and field, and hires it out, and someone else takes possession of his house, garden, and field, and uses it for 3 years, if the first owner returns and claims his house, garden, and field, it shall not be given to him, but he who has taken possession of it and used it shall continue to use it. 31. If he hires it out for 1 year and then returns, the house, garden, and field shall be given back to him, and he shall take it over again. 32. If a chieftain or man is captured on the way of the king in war, and a merchant buys him free, and brings him back to his place, if he has the means in his house to buy his freedom, then he shall buy himself free. If he has nothing in his house with which to buy himself free, he shall be bought free by the temple of his community. If there be nothing in the temple with which to buy him free, the court shall buy his freedom. His field, garden, and house shall not be given for the purchase of his freedom. 33. If a lacunae, or a lacunae, enter himself as withdrawn from the way of the king, and send a mercenary as a substitute, but withdraw him, then the lacunae, or lacunae, shall be put to death. 34. If a lacunae, or a lacunae, harm the property of a captain, injure the captain, or take away from the captain a gift presented to him by the king, then the lacunae, or lacunae, shall be put to death. 35. If anyone buys the sheep or cattle of which the king has given to chieftains from him, he loses his money. 36. The field, garden, and house of a chieftain, or a man, or of one subject to quit rent, cannot be sold. 37. If anyone buys the field, garden, and house of a chieftain, man, or one subject to quit rent, his contract tablet of sale shall be broken, declared invalid, and he loses his money. The field, garden, and house return to their owners. 38. A chieftain, man, or one subject to quit rent cannot assign his tenure of field, house, and garden to his wife or daughter, nor can he assign it for a debt. 39. He may, however, assign a field, garden, or house which he has bought and holds as property to his wife or daughter, or give it up for debt. 40. He may sell field, garden, and house to a merchant, royal agents, or to any other public official, the buyer holding field, house, and garden for its usufruct. 41. If any one fence in the field, garden, and house of a chieftain, man, or one subject to quit rent, furnishing the palings therefor, if the chieftain, man, or one subject to quit rent returns to the field, garden, and house, the palings which were given to him become his property. 42. If anyone takes over a field to till it, and obtain no harvest therefrom, it must be proved that he did no work on the field, and he must deliver grain just as his neighbour raised to the owner of the field. 43. If he did not till the field, but let it lie fallow, he shall give grain like his neighbours to the owner of the field, and the field which he let lie fallow he must plough and sow, and return to its owner. 44. If anyone takes over a waste-lying field to make it arable, but is lazy, and does not make it arable, he shall plough the fallow field in the 4th year, harrow it and till it, and give it back to its owner. For each 10 gan, a measure of area, 10 gur of grain shall be paid. 45. If a man rent his field for tillage, for a fixed rental, and receive the rent of his field, but bad weather comes and destroys the harvest, the injury falls upon the tiller of the soil. 46. If he does not receive a fixed rental for his field, but lets it on half or third shares of the harvest, the grain on the field shall be divided proportionally between the tiller and the owner. 47. If the tiller, because he did not succeed in the 1st year, has the soil tilled by others, the owner may raise no objection. The field has been cultivated, and he receives the harvest according to agreement. 48. If anyone owes a debt for a loan, and a storm prostrates the grain, or the harvest fails, or the grain does not grow for lack of water, in that year he need not give his creditor any grain. He washes his debt tablet in water, and pays no rent for this year. 49. If anyone takes money from a merchant, and gives the merchant a field tillable for corn or sesame, and orders him to plant corn or sesame in the field, and to harvest the crop, if the cultivator plants corn or sesame in the field, at the harvest the corn or sesame that is in the field shall belong to the owner of the field, and he shall pay corn as rent, for the money he received from the merchant, and the livelihood of the cultivator shall he give to the merchant. 50. If he gives a cultivated cornfield or a cultivated sesame field, the corn or sesame in the field shall belong to the owner of the field, and he shall return the money to the merchant as rent. 51. If he has no money to repay, then he shall pay in corn or sesame in place of the money as rent for what he received from the merchant according to the royal tariff. 52. If the cultivator does not plant corn or sesame in the same field, the debtor's contract is not weakened. 53. If anyone be too lazy to keep his dam in proper condition, and does not so keep it, then if the dam breaks and all the fields be flooded, then he in whose dam the break occurred be sold for money, and the money shall replace the corn which he has caused to be ruined. 54. If he is not able to replace the corn, then he and his possessions shall be divided among the farmers whose corn he has flooded. 55. If anyone opens his ditches to water his crop, but is careless, and the water floods the field of his neighbour, then he shall pay his neighbour corn for his loss. 56. If a man lets in the water, and the water overflow of the plantation of his neighbour, he shall pay 10 gur of corn for every 10 gan of land. 57. If a shepherd, without the permission of the owner of the field, without the knowledge of the owner of the sheep, lets the sheep into the field to graze, then the owner of the field shall harvest his crop, and the shepherd, who had pastured his flock here without the permission of the owner of the field, shall pay to the owner 20 gur of corn for every 10 gan. 58. If, after the flocks have left the pasture and been shut up in the common fold at the city gate, any shepherd let them into a field, and they graze there, this shepherd shall take possession of the field which he has allowed to be grazed on, and at the harvest he must pay 60 gur of corn for every 10 gan. 59. If any man, without the knowledge of the owner of a garden, fell a tree in the garden, he shall pay half a mina in money. 60. If anyone give over a field to a gardener for him to plant as a garden, if he work at it and care for it 4 years, in the 5th year the owner and the gardener shall divide it, the owner taking his part in charge. 61. If the gardener has not completed the planting of a field, leaving one part unused, this shall be assigned to him as his. 62. If he does not plant the field that was given over to him as a garden, if it be arable land for corn or sesame, the gardener shall pay the owner of the produce of the field for the years he let it lie fallow, according to the product of neighbouring fields, put the field in arable condition, and return it to its owner. 63. If he transforms waste land into arable fields and returns it to its owner, the latter shall pay him for 1 year 10 gur for 10 gan. 64. If anyone hands over his garden to a gardener to work, the gardener shall pay to its owner 2/3 of the produce of the garden, for so long as he has it in his possession, and the other third he shall keep. 65. If the gardener does not work in the garden, and the product falls off, the gardener shall pay in proportion to other neighbouring gardens. Here a portion of the text is missing, apparently comprising 34 paragraphs. 100. Lacunae. Interest for the money. As much as he has received, he shall give a note therefor, and on the day which they settle, pay the merchant. 101. If there are no mercantile arrangements in the place whither he went, he shall leave the entire amount of money which he received with the broker to give to the merchant. 102. If a merchant entrusts money to a broker for some investment, and the broker suffers a loss in the place to which he goes, he shall make good the capital to the merchant. 103. If, while on the journey, an enemy take away from him anything that he had, the broker shall swear by God and be free of obligation. 104. If a merchant gives an agent corn, wool, or oil, or any other goods to transport, the agent shall give a receipt for the amount, and compensate the merchant therefor. He shall obtain a receipt from the merchant for the money that he gives the merchant. 105. If the agent is careless and does not take a receipt for the money which he gave the merchant, he cannot consider the unreceipted money as his own. 106. If the agent accepts money from the merchant, but has a quarrel with the merchant, denying the receipt, then shall the merchant swear before God and witnesses that he has given this money to the agent, and the agent shall pay him 3 times the sum. 107. If the merchant cheats the agent, in that as the latter has returned to him all that had been given him, but the merchant denies the receipt of what has been returned to him, then shall this agent convict the merchant before God and the judges, and if he still denies receiving what the agent had given him, he shall pay 6 times the sum to the agent. 108. If a tavern keeper, feminine, does not accept corn according to gross weight in payment of drink, but takes money, and the price of the drink is less than that of the corn, she shall be convicted and thrown into the water. 109. If conspirators meet in the house of a tavern keeper, and these conspirators are not captured and delivered to the court, the tavern keeper shall be put to death. 110. If a sister of a god opens a tavern or enters a tavern to drink, then this woman shall be burned to death. 111. If an innkeeper furnishes 60 ka of usakini drink to lacunae, she shall receive 50 ka of corn at the harvest. 112. If anyone be on a journey and entrusts silver, gold, precious stones, or any movable property to another, and wishes to recover it from him, if the latter did not bring all of the property to the appointed place, but appropriates it to use his own, then shall this man who did not bring the property to hand it over be convicted, and he shall pay fivefold for all that has been entrusted to him. 113. If anyone has a consignment of corn or money, and he takes from the granary or box without the knowledge of the owner, then shall he who took corn without the knowledge of the owner of the granary or money out of the box be legally convicted, and repay the corn he has taken, and he shall lose whatever commission was paid to him or due him. 114. If a man has no claim on another for corn and money, and tries to demand it by force, he shall pay 1/3 of a mina of silver in every case. 115. If anyone should have a claim for corn or money upon another, and imprison him, if the prisoner dies in prison a natural death, the case shall go no further. 116. If the prisoner dies in prison from blows or maltreatment, the master of the prison shall convict the merchant before the judge. If he was a free-born man, the son of the merchant shall be put to death. If it was a slave, he shall pay 1/3 of a mina of gold, and all that the master of the prison gave he shall forfeit. 117. If anyone fails to meet a claim for debt, and sells himself, his wife, his son, and daughter for money, or to give them away to forced labour, they shall work for 3 years in the house of the man who bought them, or the proprietor, and in the 4th year they shall be set free. 118. If he gives a male or female slave away for forced labour, and the merchant subleases them, or sells them for money, no objection can be raised. 119. If anyone fails to meet a claim for debt, and he sells the maidservant who has borne him children for money, the money which the merchant has paid shall be repaid to him by the owner of the slave, and she shall be freed. 120. If anyone stores corn for safekeeping in another person's house, and any harm happens to the corn in storage, or if the owner of the house opens the granary and takes some of the corn, or if he especially denies that the corn was stored in his house, then the owner of the corn shall claim his corn before God on oath, and the owner of the house shall pay its owner for all the corn that he took. 121. If anyone stores corn in another man's house, he shall pay him storage at the rate of 1 gur for every 5 ka of corn per year. 122. If anyone gives another silver, gold, or anything else to keep, he shall show everything to some witness, draw up a contract, and then hand it over for safekeeping. 123. If he turns it over for safekeeping without witnesses or contracts, and if he to whom it was given denies it, then he has no legitimate claim. 124. If anyone delivers silver, gold, or anything else to another for safekeeping before a witness, but he denies it, he shall be brought before a judge, and all that he has denied he shall pay in full. 125. If anyone places his property with another for safekeeping, and there, either through thieves or robbers, his property and the property of the other man may be lost, the owner of the house, through whose neglect the loss took place, shall compensate the owner for all that was given him in charge. But the owner of the house shall try to follow up and recover his property and take it away from the thief. 126. If anyone who has not lost his goods state that they have been lost, and makes false claims, if he claims his goods and the amount of injury before God, even though he has not lost them, he shall be fully compensated for his loss claimed. 127. If anyone points the finger at a sister of a god, or the wife of anyone, and cannot prove it, this man shall be taken before the judges, and his brow shall be marked. 128. If a man takes a woman to wife, but has no intercourse with her, then this woman is no wife to him. 129. If a man's wife be surprised with another man, both shall be tied and thrown into the water, but the husband may pardon his wife, and the king his slaves. 130. If a man violates the wife, betrothed or child wife of another man who has never known a man, and still lives in her father's house, and sleeps with her and be surprised, this man shall be put to death, but the wife is blameless. 131. If a man brings charge against one's wife, but she is not surprised with another man, she must take an oath, and they may return to her house. 132. If the finger is pointed at a man's wife about another man, but she is not caught sleeping with the other man, she shall jump into the river for her husband. 133. If a man is taken prisoner in war, and there is sustenance in his house, but his wife leaves house and court to go to another house, because this wife did not keep her court and went to another house, she shall be judicially condemned and thrown into the water. 134. If anyone is captured in war, and there is not sustenance in his house, then if his wife goes to another house, this woman shall be held blameless. 135. If a man be taken prisoner in war, and there is no sustenance in his house, and his wife goes to another house and bears children, and if later her husband returns and come to his home, then the wife shall return to her husband, but the children follow their father. 136. If anyone leaves his house, run away, and then his wife goes to another house, if he then returns and wishes to take his wife back, because he fled from his home and ran away, the wife of this runaway shall not return to her husband. 137. If a man wishes to separate from a woman who has borne him children, or from his wife who has borne him children, then he shall give that wife her dowry, and a part of the usufruct of a field, garden, and property, so that she can rear her children. When she has brought up her children, a portion of all that is given to the children, equal as that of one son, shall be given to her. She may then marry the man of her heart. 138. If a man wishes to separate from his wife who has borne him no children, then he shall give her the amount of her purchase money and the dowry which she brought from her father's house, and let her go. 139. If there was no purchase price, he shall give her 1 mina of gold as a gift of release. 140. If he be a freed man, he shall give her 1/3 of a mina of gold. 141. If a man's wife, who lives in his house, wishes to leave it, plunges into debt, tries to ruin her house, neglects her husband, and is judicially convicted, if her husband offers her release, she may go on her way, but he gives her nothing as a gift of release. If her husband does not wish to release her, and if he takes another wife, she shall remain as servant in her husband's house. 142. If a woman quarrels with her husband and says, "You are not congenial to me," the reasons for her prejudice must be presented. If she is guiltless, and there is no fault on her part, but he leaves and neglects her, then no guilt attaches to this woman. She shall take her dowry and go back to her father's house. 143. If she is not innocent, but leaves her husband and ruins her house, neglecting her husband, this woman shall be cast into the water. 144. If a man takes a wife, and this woman gives her husband a maidservant, and she bears him children, but this man wishes to take another wife, this shall not be permitted to him. He shall not take a second wife. 145. If a man takes a wife, and she bears him no children, and he intends to take another wife, if he takes this second wife and brings her into the house, the second wife shall not be allowed equality with his wife. 146. If a man takes a wife, and she gives this man a maidservant as a wife, and she bears him children, and then this maidservant assumes equality with the wife, Because she has borne him children, her master shall not sell her for money, but he may keep her as a slave, reckoning her among the maidservants. 147. If she has not borne him children, then her mistress may sell her for money. 148. If a man takes a wife, and she be seized by disease, if he then desires to take a second wife, he shall not put away his wife, who has been attacked by disease, but shall keep her in the house which he has built, and support her so long as she lives. 149. If this woman does not wish to remain in her husband's house, then he shall compensate her for the dowry which she brought with her from her father's house, and she may go. 150. If a man gives his wife a field, garden, and house, and a deed therefor, and if then, after the death of her husband, the sons raise no claim, then the mother may bequeath it all to one of her sons whom she prefers, and need leave nothing to his brothers. 151. If a woman who lived in a man's house made an agreement with her husband that no creditor can arrest her, and has given a document therefor, if that man before he married that woman had a debt, the creditor cannot hold the woman for it. But if the woman, before she entered the man's house, had contracted a debt, her creditor cannot arrest her husband therefor. 152. If after the woman has entered the man's house, both contracted a debt, both must pay the merchant. 153. If the wife of one man on account of another man has their mates, her husband and the other man's wife, murdered, both of them shall be impaled. 154. If a man is guilty of incest with his daughter, he shall be driven from the place. 155. If a man betroth to a girl his son, and his son has intercourse with her, but he, the father, afterwards defiles her, and be surprised, then he shall be bound and cast into the water. 156. If a man betroth to a girl his son, but his son has not known her, and if he, the father, then defiles her, he shall pay her half a gold mina, and compensate her for all that she brought out of her father's house. She may marry the man of her heart. 157. If anyone is guilty of incest with his mother after his father, both shall be burned. 158. If anyone be surprised that his father with his chief wife, who has borne children, he shall be driven out of his father's house. 159. If anyone who has brought chattels into his father-in-law's house, has paid the purchase money, looks for another wife, and says to his father-in-law, I do not want your daughter, the girl's father may keep all that he had brought. 160. If a man brings chattels into the house of his father-in-law, and pays the purchase price for his wife, then if the father of the girl says, I will not give you my daughter, he shall give him back all that he brought with him. 161. If a man brings chattels to his father-in-law's house, and pays the purchase price, then if his friends slander him, and his father-in-law says to the young husband, You shall not marry my daughter, then he shall give back to him undiminished all that he had brought with him, but his wife shall not be married to the friend. 162. If a man marries a woman, and she bears sons to him, then if this woman dies, then shall her father have no claim on her dowry. This belongs to her sons. 163. If a man marries a woman and she bears him no sons, then if this woman dies, if the purchase price which he had paid to the house of his father-in-law is repaid to him, her husband shall have no claim upon the dowry of this woman, for it belongs to her father's house. 164. If this father-in-law does not pay back to him the amount of the purchase price, he may subtract the amount of the purchase price from the dowry, then pay the remainder to her father's house. 165. If a man gives to one of his sons, whom he prefers, a field, garden, and house, and a deed therefor, if later the father dies, and the brothers divide the estate, they shall first give him the present of his father, and he shall accept it, and the rest of the paternal property they shall divide. 166. If a man takes wives for his son, but takes no wife for his minor son, and if he then dies, if the sons divide the estate, they shall set aside besides his portion the money for the purchase price for the minor brother, who has taken no wife yet, and secure a wife for him. 167. If a man marries a wife and she bears him children, if this wife dies and then he takes another wife and she bears him children, if then the father dies, the sons must not partition the estate according to the mothers. They shall divide the dowries of their mothers only in this way. The paternal estate they shall divide equally with one another. 168. If a man wishes to put his son out of the house, and declares before the judge, "I want to put my son out," then the judge shall examine into his reasons. If the son be guilty of no great fault, for which he can be rightfully put out, then the father shall not put him out. 169. If he be guilty of a grave fault, which should rightly deprive him of the filial relationship, the father shall forgive him the first time. But if he be guilty of a grave fault the second time, the father may deprive his son of all filial relation. 170. If his wife bears sons to a man, or his maidservant have borne sons, and the father while still living says to the children whom his maidservant has borne, "My sons," and he counts them with the sons of his wife, if the father dies, then the sons of the wife and of the maidservant shall divide the paternal property in common. The son of the wife is to partition and choose. 171. If, however, the father while still living did not say to the sons of the maidservant, "My sons," and then the father dies, then the sons of the maidservant shall not share in the sons of the wife, but the freedom of the maid and her sons shall be granted. The sons of the wife shall have no right to enslave the sons of the maid. The wife shall take her dowry from her father, and the gift that her husband gives her, and deed it to her, separate from the dowry or the purchase money paid her father, and live in the home of her husband. So long as she lives shall she use it. It shall not be sold for money. Whatever she leaves shall belong to her children. 172. If her husband made no gift, she shall be compensated for her gift. She shall receive a portion of the estate from her husband, equal to that of one child. If her sons oppress her to force her out of the house, the judge shall examine into the matter. If the sons are at fault, the woman shall not leave her husband's house. If the woman desires to leave the house, she must leave to her sons the gift which her husband gave her, but she may take the dowry of her father's house. She may then marry the man of her heart. 173. If this woman bears sons to her second husband, in the place to which she went, and then dies, her earlier and later sons shall divide the dowry between them. 174. If she bears no sons to her second husband, the sons of her first husband shall have the dowry. 175. If a state slave or the slave of a freed man marries the daughter of a free man, and children are born, the master of the slave shall have no right to enslave the children of the free. 176. If, however, a state slave or the slave of a freed man marries a man's daughter, and after he marries her brings a dowry from a father's house, if they both enjoy it and found a household, and accumulate means, then if the slave dies, then she who was free-born may take her dowry, and all that her husband and she had earned. She shall divide them into two parts. One half the master for the slave shall take, and the other half shall the free-born woman take for her children. If the free-born woman had had no gift, she shall take all that her husband and she had earned, and divide it into two parts. The master of the slave shall take one half, and she shall take the other for her children. 177. If a widow, whose children are not grown, wishes to enter into another house, she shall not enter it without the knowledge of the judge. If she enters another house, the judge shall examine the state of the house of her first husband. Then the house of her first husband shall be entrusted to the second husband, and the woman herself as managers, and a record must be made thereof. She shall keep the house in order, bring up the children, and not sell the household utensils. He who buys the utensils of the children of a widow shall lose his money, and his goods shall be returned to their owners. 178. If a devoted woman or a prostitute to whom her father has given a dowry and a deed thereof, but in this deed it is not stated that she may bequeath it as she pleases, and has not explicitly stated that she has the right of disposal, if then her father dies, then her brothers shall hold her field and garden, give her corn, oil, and milk, according to her portion, and satisfy her. If her brothers do not give her corn, oil, and milk, according to her share, then her field and garden shall support her. She shall have the usufruct of field and garden, and all that her father gave her so long as she lives, but she cannot sell or assign it to others. Her position of inheritance belongs to her brothers. 179. If a sister of a god or a prostitute receives a gift from her father, and a deed in which it has been explicitly stated that she may dispose of it as she pleases, and gives her complete disposition thereof, if then her father dies, she may then leave her property to whomever so she pleases. Her brothers can raise no claim thereto. 180. If a father gives a present to his daughter, either marriageable or prostitute unmarriageable, and then dies, then she is to receive a portion as a child from the paternal estate, and enjoy its usufruct as long as she lives. Her estate belongs to her brothers. 181. If a father devotes a temple maid or temple virgin to God, and gives her no present, then if the father dies, she shall receive the third of a child's portion from the inheritance of her father's house, and enjoy its usufruct as long as she lives. Her estate belongs to her brothers. 182. If a father devotes his daughter as a wife of Mahdi of Babylon, and gives her no present nor a deed, then if her father dies, she shall receive 1/3 of her portion as a child of her father's house, from her brothers, but Marduk may leave her estate to whomever she wishes. 183. If a man gives his daughter by a concubine a dowry, and a husband and a deed, if then her father dies, she shall receive no portion from the paternal estate. 184. If a man does not give a dowry to his daughter by a concubine, and no husband, then if her father dies, her brother shall give her a dowry according to her father's wealth, and secure a husband for her. 185. If a man adopts a child, and to his name as a son, and rear him, this grown son cannot be demanded back again. 186. If a man adopts a son, and if after he has taken him, he injures his foster father and mother, then his adopted son shall return to his father's house. 187. The son of a paramour in the palace service, or of a prostitute, cannot be demanded back. 188. If an artisan has undertaken to rear a child, and teaches him his craft, he cannot be demanded back. 189. If he has not taught him his craft, this adopted son may return to his father's house. 190. If a man does not maintain a child that he has adopted as a son, and reared with his other children, then his adopted son may return to his father's house. 191. If a man who had adopted a son and reared him, founded a household, and had children, wished to put this adopted son out, then this son shall not simply go his way. His adoptive father shall give him of his wealth 1/3 of a child's portion, and then he may go. He shall not give him of the field, garden, and house. 193. If the son of a paramour or a prostitute desires his father's house, and deserts his adoptive father and adoptive mother, and goes to his father's house, then his eye shall be put out. 194. If a man gives his child to a nurse, and the child dies in her hands, but the nurse, unbeknown to the father and mother, nurses another child, then they shall convict her of having nursed another child without the knowledge of the father and the mother, and her breasts shall be cut off. 195. If a son strikes his father, his hands shall be hewn off. 196. If a man puts out the eye of another man, his eye shall be put out. 197. If he breaks another man's bone, his bone shall be broken. 198. If he puts out the eye of a freedman, or breaks the bone of a freedman, he shall pay 1 gold mina. 199. If he puts out the eye of a man's slave, or breaks the bone of a man's slave, he shall pay 1/2 of its value. 200. If a man knocks out the teeth of his equal, his teeth shall be knocked out. 201. If he knocks out the teeth of a freedman, he shall pay 1/3 of a gold mina. 202. If anyone strikes the body of a man higher in rank than he shall receive 60 blows with an ox whip in public. 203. If a freeborn man strikes the body of another freeborn man of equal rank, he shall pay 1 gold mina. 204. If a freedman strikes the body of another freedman, he shall pay 10 shekels in money. If a slave of a freedman strikes the body of a freedman, his ear shall be cut off. 206. If during a quarrel one man strikes another and wounds him, then he shall swear, I did not injure him wittingly, and pay the physicians. 207. If the man dies of his wound, he shall swear similarly that he, the deceased, was a freeborn man, and he shall pay 1/2 mina in money. 208. If he was a freedman, he shall pay 1/3 of a mina. 209. If a man strikes a freeborn woman so that she loses her unborn child, he shall pay 10 shekels for her loss. 210. If the woman dies, his daughter shall be put to death. 211. If a woman of the free class loses her child by a blow, he shall pay 5 shekels in money. 212. If this woman dies, he shall pay 1/2 mina. 213. If he strikes the maidservant of a man and she loses her child, he shall pay 2 shekels in money. 214. If this maidservant dies, he shall pay 1/3 of a mina. 215. If a physician makes a large incision with an operating knife and cures it, or if he opens a tumour over the eye with an operating knife and saves the eye, he shall receive 10 shekels in money. 216. If the patient be a freed man, he receives 5 shekels. 217. If he be the slave of someone, his owner shall give the physician 2 shekels. 218. If a physician makes a large incision with the operating knife and kills him, or opens a tumour with the operating knife and cuts out the eye, his hands shall be cut off. 219. If a physician makes a large incision in the slave of a freed man and kills him, he shall replace the slave with another slave. 220. If he has opened a tumour with the operating knife and put out his eye, he shall pay 1/2 his value. 221. If a physician heals the broken bone or diseased soft part of a man, the patient shall pay the physician 5 shekels in money. 222. If he were a freed man, he shall pay 3 shekels. 223. If he were a slave, his owner shall pay the physician 2 shekels. 224. If a veterinary surgeon performs a serious operation on an ass or an ox and cures it, the owner shall pay the surgeon 1/6 of a shekel as a fee. 225. If he performs a serious operation on an ass or an ox and kills it, he shall pay the owner 1/4 of its value. 226. If a barber, without the knowledge of his master, cut the sign of a slave on a slave not to be sold, the hands of this barber shall be cut off. 227. If anyone deceives a barber, and have him mark a slave not for sale but with the sign of the slave, he shall be put to death and buried in his house. The barber shall swear, I did not mark him wittingly, and shall be guiltless. 228. If a builder builds a house for someone and completes it, he shall be given a fee of 2 shekels in money for each sar of surface. 229. If a builder builds a house for someone and does not construct it properly, and the house for which he built falls in and kills its owner, then that builder shall be put to death. 230. If it kills the son of the owner, the son of the builder shall be put to death. 231. If it kills a slave of the owner, then he shall pay slave for slave to the owner of the house. 232. If it ruins goods, he shall make compensation for all that has been ruined, and inasmuch as he did not construct properly this house which he built and it fell, he shall re-erect the house from his own means. 233. If a builder builds a house for someone, even though it is not yet completed it, if the walls seem toppling, the builder must make walls solid from his own means. 234. If a shipbuilder builds a boat of 60 gur for a man, he shall pay him a fee of 2 shekels in money. 235. If a shipbuilder builds a boat for someone and does not make it tight, if during that same year the boat is sent away and suffers injury, the shipbuilder shall take the boat apart and put it together tight at his own expense. The tight boat shall he give to the boat owner. 236. If a man rents his boat to a sailor, and the sailor is careless, and the boat is wrecked or goes aground, the sailor shall give the owner of the boat another boat as compensation. 237. If a man hires a sailor and his boat, and provides it with corn, clothing, oil and dates, and other things of the kind needed for fitting it, if the sailor is careless, and the boat is wrecked, and the contents ruined, then the sailor shall compensate for the boat which was wrecked, and all in it that he ruined. 238. If a sailor wrecks anyone's ship, but saves it, he shall pay half of its value in money. 239. If a man hires a sailor, he shall pay him 6 gur of corn per year. 240. If a merchantman runs against a ferry boat, and wrecks it, and the master of the ship that was wrecked shall seek justice before God, the master of the merchantman which wrecked the ferry boat must compensate the owner for the boat and all that he ruined. 241. If anyone impresses an ox for forced labour, he shall pay 1/3 of a mina in money. If anyone hires oxen for 242. If anyone hires oxen for a year, he shall pay 4 gur of corn for plough oxen. 243. As rent of herd cattle, he shall pay 3 gur of corn to the owner. 244. If anyone hires an ox or an ass, and a lion kills it in the field, the loss is upon its owner. 245. If anyone hires oxen, and kills them by bad treatment or blows, he shall compensate the owner oxen for oxen. 246. If a man hires an ox, and he breaks its leg or cuts the ligament of its neck, he shall compensate the owner with an ox for ox. 247. If anyone hires an ox and puts out its eye, he shall pay the owner 1/2 of its value. 248. If anyone hires an ox and breaks off a horn, or cuts off its tail, or hurts its muzzle, he shall pay 1/4 of its value in money. 249. If anyone hires an ox, and God strikes that it die, the man who hired it shall swear by God, and be considered guiltless. 250. If while an ox is passing on the street, someone pushes it and kills it, the owner can set up no claim against the suit. 251. If an ox be a goring ox, and it is shown that it is a gorer, and he does not bind its horns or fasten the ox up, and the ox gores a freeborn man and kills him, the owner shall pay 1/2 a mina in money. 252. If he kills a man's slave, he shall pay 1/3 of a mina. 253. If anyone agrees with another to tend his field, gives him seed, and entrusts a yoke of oxen to him, and bind him to cultivate the field, if he steals the corn or plants, and takes them for himself, his hands shall be hewn off. 254. If he takes the seed corn for himself, and does not use the yoke of oxen, he shall compensate him for the amount of the seed corn. 255. If he sublet the man's yoke of oxen, or steal the seed corn, planting nothing in the field, he shall be convicted, and for each 100 gan he shall pay 60 gur of corn. 256. If his community will not pay for him, he shall then be placed in that field with the cattle at work. 257. If anyone hires a field labourer, he shall pay him 8 gur of corn per year. 258. If anyone hires an ox driver, he shall pay him 60 gur of corn a year. 259. If anyone steals a water wheel from the field, he shall pay 5 shekels in money to its owner. 260. If anyone steals a shadoof, used to draw water from the river or canal, or a plough, he shall pay 3 shekels in money. 261. If anyone hires a herdsman for sheep or cattle, he shall pay him 8 gur of corn per annum. 262. If anyone, a cow or a sheep, lacunae. 263. If he kills the cattle or sheep that were given to him, he shall compensate the owner with cattle for cattle and sheep for sheep. 264. If a herdsman to whom cattle or sheep have been entrusted for watching over, who has received his wages as agreed upon and is satisfied, diminishes the number of cattle or sheep, or makes the increase by birth less, he shall make good the increase or profit which was lost in the terms of settlement. 265. If a herdsman to whose care cattle or sheep have been entrusted is guilty of fraud and makes false returns of the natural increase, or sells them for money, then he shall be convicted and pay the owner 10 times the loss. 267. If the herdsman overlooks something, and an accident happens in the stable, then the herdsman is at fault for the accident which he has caused in the stable, and must compensate the owner for the cattle or sheep. 268. If anyone hires an ox for threshing, the amount of hire is 20 kar of corn. 269. If he hires an ass for threshing, the hire is 20 kar of corn. 270. If he hires a young animal for threshing, the hire is 10 kar of corn. 271. If anyone hires oxen, cart, and driver, he shall pay 180 kar of corn per day. 272. If anyone hires a cart alone, he shall pay 40 kar of corn per day. 273. If anyone hires a day labourer, he shall pay him from the new year until the 5th month, April to August, when the days are long and work hard, 6 gerahs of money per day. From the 6th month to the end of the year, he shall give him 5 gerahs per day. 274. If anyone hires a skilled artisan, he shall pay his wages of the lacunae 5 gerahs, as wages of the potters 5 gerahs, of a tailor 5 gerahs, of lacunae, of a rope maker 4 gerahs, of lacunae, gerahs, of a mason gerahs per day. 275. If anyone hires a ferry boat, he shall pay 3 gerahs in money per day. 276. If he hires a freight boat, he shall pay 2.5 gerahs per day. 277. If anyone hires a ship of 60 gur, he shall pay 1/6 of a shekel in money as its hire per day. 278. If anyone buys a male or female slave, and before a month has elapsed, the Bennu disease be developed, he shall return the slave to the seller and receive the money which he has paid. 279. If anyone buys a male or female slave, and then a third party claims it, the seller is liable for the claim. 280. If, while in a foreign country, a man buys a male or female slave belonging to another of his own country, if, when he returns home, the owner of the male or female slave recognizes it, if the male or female slave be a native of the country, he shall give them back without any money. 281. If they are from another country, the buyer shall declare the amount of money paid therefor to the merchant, and keep the male or female slave. 282. If a slave says to his master, "You are not my master," if they convict him, his master shall cut off his ear. Epilogue. Laws of justice which Hammurabi the wise king established. A righteous law, a pious statute did he teach the land. Hammurabi the protecting king am I. I have not withdrawn myself from men, whom Bel gave to me, the rule over whom Marduk gave to me. I was not negligent, but I made them a peaceful abiding place. I expounded all great difficulties. I made the light shine upon them. With the mighty weapons which Zamama and Ishtar entrusted me, with the keen vision which Ea endowed me, with the wisdom that Marduk gave me, I have uprooted the enemy above and below, subdued the earth, brought prosperity to the land, guaranteed security to the inhabitants in their homes. A disturber was not permitted. The great gods have called me. I am the salvation-bearing shepherd, whose staff is straight, the good shadow that is spread over my city. On my breast I cherish the inhabitants of the land of Sumer and Akkad. In my shelter I let them repose in peace. In my deep wisdom I have enclosed them, that the strong might not injure the weak, in order to protect the widows and orphans. I have in Babylon the city where Anu and Bel raise high their head, in Sagil, the temple whose foundations stand as firm as heaven and earth, in order to bespeak justice in the land, to settle all disputes, to heal all injuries. Set up these my precious words, written upon my memorial stone, before the image of me as King of righteousness. The king who ruleth among kings of the cities am I. My words are well considered. There is no wisdom like unto mine. By the command of Shamash, the great judge of heaven and earth, let righteousness go forth in the land. By the order of Marduk, my lord, let no destruction befall my monument. In Sagal, which I love, let my name be ever repeated. Let the oppressed, who has a case at law, come and stand before this, my image as a king of righteousness. Let him read the inscription and understand my precious words. The inscription will explain his case to him. He will find out what is just, and his heart will be glad, so that he will say, Hammurabi is a ruler, who is as a father to his subjects, who holds the words of Marduk in reverence, who has achieved conquest for Marduk over the north and south, who rejoices as the heart of Marduk his lord, who has bestowed benefits for ever and ever on his subjects, and has established order in the land. When he reads the record, let him pray with a full heart to Marduk, my lord, and Zarpanet, my lady, and then shall the protecting deities and the gods, who frequent Sagil, graciously grant the desires daily presented before Marduk, my lord, and Zarpanet, my lady. In future time, through all coming generations, let the king who may be in the land observe the words of righteousness, which I have written on my monument. Let him not alter the law of the land, which I have given, the edicts which I have enacted. My monument let him not mar. If such a ruler has wisdom, and be able to keep his land in order, he shall observe the words which I have written in this inscription, the rule, statute, and law of the land which I have given. The decisions which I have made will this inscription show him. Let him rule his subjects accordingly. Speak justice to them, give right decisions, root out miscreants and criminals from the land, and grant prosperity to his subjects. Hammurabi, the king of righteousness, on whom Shamash has conferred right, am I. My words are well considered, my deeds are not equalled. Bring low those that were high, humble the proud, to expel insolence. If a succeeding ruler considers my words, which I have written in this my inscription, if he does not annul my law, nor corrupt my words, nor change my monument, then may Shamash lengthen that king's reign, as that he did of me, the king of righteousness, that he may reign in righteousness over his subjects. If this ruler does not esteem my words, which I have written in my inscription, if he despises my curses, and fears not the curse of God, if he destroys the law which I have given, corrupts my words, and changes my monument, effaces my name, and writes his name there, or on account of the curses commission another to do so, that man, whether king or ruler, patesi or commoner, no matter what he may be, may the great god Anu, father of the gods, who has ordered my rule, withdraw from him the glory of royalty, break his sceptre, curse his destiny. May Bel, the Lord, who fixeth destiny, whose command cannot be altered, who has made my kingdom great, order a rebellion which his hand cannot control. May he let the wind of the overthrow of his habitation blow. May he ordain the years of his rule in groaning, years of scarcity, years of famine, darkness without light, death with seeing eyes be fated to him. May Bel order with his potent mouth the destruction of his city, the dispersion of his subjects, the cutting off of his rule, the removal of his name and memory from the land. May Belit, the great mother, whose command is potent in the E-Kur, the mistress who hearkens graciously to my petitions, be in the seat of judgment and decision, turn his affairs evil before Bel, and put the devastation of his land, the destruction of his subjects, the pouring out of his life like water into the mouth of King Bel. May Ea, the great ruler, whose fated decrees come to pass, the thinker of the gods, the omniscient, who maketh long the days of my life, withdraw understanding and wisdom from him. Lead him to forgetfulness. Shut up his rivers at their sources, and not allow corn or sustenance for man to grow in his land. May Shamash, the great judge of heaven and earth, who supporteth all means of livelihood, Lord of life courage, shatter his dominion, annul his law, destroy his way, make vain the march of his troops, send him in his visions, forecasts of the uprooting of the foundations of his throne, and the destruction of his land. May the condemnation of Shamash overtake him forthwith. May he be deprived of water above among the living, and his spirit below in the earth. May Sin, the Lord of heaven, the divine Father whose crescent gives light amongst the gods, take away the crown and regal throne from him. May he be put upon him heavy guilt, great decay, that nothing may be lower than he. May he destine him as fated, days, months, and years of dominion filled with sighing and tears, the increase of the burden of dominion, a life that is like unto death. May Adad, the Lord of fruitfulness, the ruler of heaven and earth, my helper, withhold from him the rain from heaven, and the waters of flood from the springs, destroying his land by famine and want. May he rage mightily over his city, and make his land into the flood hills. May Zamama, the great warrior, the firstborn son of Ekur, who goeth at my right hand, shatter his weapons on the field of battle, turn day into night for him, and let his foe triumph over him. May Ishtar, the goddess of fighting and war, who unfetters my weapons, my gracious protecting spirit who loveth my dominion, curse his kingdom in her angry heart. In her great wrath change his grace to evil, and shatter his weapons on the place of fighting and war. May she create disorder and sedition for him, strike down his warriors, that the earth may drink their blood, and throw down the piles of corpses of his warriors on the field. May she not grant him a life of mercy, deliver him into the hands of his enemies, and imprison him in the land of his enemies. May Nagal, the might among the gods, whose contest is irresistible, who grants me victory, in his great might burn up his subjects like a slender reed stalk, cut off his limbs with his mighty weapons, and shatter him like an earthen image. May Nintu, the sublime mistress of the lands, the fruitful mother, deny him a son, vouchsafe him no name, give to him no successor among men. May Nin Karak, the daughter of Anu, who adjudges grace to me, cause to come upon his members in Ekur high fever, severe wounds which cannot be healed, whose nature the physician does not understand, which he cannot treat with dressing, which, like the bite of death, cannot be removed until they have sapped away his life. May he lament the loss of his life power, and may the great gods of heaven and earth, the Anunnaki, together inflict a curse and evil upon the confines of the temple, the walls of this Ibarra, upon his dominion, his lands, his warriors, his subjects, and his troops. May Bel curse him with the potent curses of his mouth that cannot be altered, and may they come upon him forthwith.